All right, and we're rolling.
Hooray.
I am so sorry about the start that we had to this podcast.
That's absolutely fine.
I get so embarrassed when things don't work properly, and I feel very unprofessional. So, again, my apologies, and I thank you for being so cooperative with me.
Yeah, of course.
TK, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty well.
Again, thank you for doing this. Now, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Are you from the Lansing area? Born and raised here?
I was originally born in Flint and then moved to Lansing. So Michigan raised.
Hold on. Move it closer to your face.
Michigan resident my whole life.
Okay.
Just bounced around a little.
Do you like it here?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Having visited several other states, I like Michigan.
Yeah. What states did you visit?
I have been to Ohio, Pennsylvania. Oh gosh, let's see. Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, Kentucky, and Hawaii.
So mostly the East Coast,
Yeah.
and then you went to Hawaii, and you still think Michigan's better than Hawaii.
I do.
Why is that?
I am not a big fan of the heat.
But you like snow and the cold?
I do like snow. I do like snow.
Oh, I hate the snow. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of humidity or heat. I like cold and dry.
Yeah, I guess I'm from Florida. So the cold weather bothers me. I don't like it. It makes me angry. Like, I guess not angry, but like if I'm walking into work, like in the mornings, like I have to walk in at like 5 o'clock, or I guess like 6 o'clock, 6:30ish area, and it's a long walk and it's brisk and the cold air is hitting your face and just makes me angry. Yeah. Like I don't
But it's only temporary. And I find that
for 8 months.
Easier. Yeah. But I find that it's easier to warm up than to cool down.
That's true. That is true.
You need just like some extra hot cocoa or spiced apple cider.
Or some coffee.
Coffee too.
Yeah. Yeah, I drink coffee.
Yeah. I don't think I could survive without coffee. Caffeine at all.
No, I had 3 cups of coffee today alone. Yeah.
I'm not going to disclose how much caffeine I've had today.
And you've been sitting here patiently waiting.
Yeah.
How do you feel? Are you nervous to do the podcast?
It is a little nerve-wracking, just because I am not a person who likes to go out and be public. But I was like, this is a really great opportunity to talk about what we do in a way that a lot of people can see, because a lot of people don't see what I'm doing at 2-3 o'clock in the morning when they're all asleep.
Yeah, I mean, why would they see that?
Yeah. And it's just a different avenue to, raise awareness.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love podcasts, because literally you can talk about so many different things and bring awareness to so many different things. Like I've had so many people on that, like, was it last week? I think it was last week. I interviewed this lady who's bringing awareness to chronic pain. And, I've interviewed other people, and I don't know, it's just real interesting because like podcasts are like the new media in a sense. It's a way to get what you're doing out there.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah. And for me, I spend a lot of time in my car. So driving or sitting. So I fluctuate between like doing like a word search or a crossword or listening to the radio or a podcast. So it's a great way to just keep up on things.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of downtime.
So what made you want to move from Flint to Michigan? Or I mean, not Michigan, Lansing. We obviously live in Michigan.
I just bounced around a lot as a kid. I was in and out of foster care.
Really?
So
was I.
Yeah.
Oh, not in and out, but I was in foster care. Yeah.
So I ended up here in the Lansing area, and I just never left.
Okay. Yeah. So
So
were you in foster care the whole time you were growing up?
no, just collectively through 2nd through 6th grade. So
And how was that experience?
it sucked. There's not a really good way to say like, oh, it was great.
Yeah,
No, it was really awful. There was a lot of things that were going on. And I look back now as an adult looking at those things that kind of happened. I go, oh, yeah, those adults should have done better, or they should have done so. If I was an adult in that situation, I would have done something completely different.
Was it something like with the type of foster homes you were in, or like the agency you guys were going through?
A little bit of both. I was in foster care during the same time that Ricky Holland was, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with his name or his story.
That's a kid from Williamston, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that got murdered by his mom. Yeah.
And one of the foster homes that I was in, they would do announced surprise inspections. So they would be like, "Oh, we're coming on Friday at 3 p.m."
Yeah.
So on Friday at 3 p.m., I was primed and polished and, prepped, and you say this and only this, and the issues that were going on in that home. That caseworker never saw it because they knew that she was coming.
That is, it's almost like you listen to my podcast.
Yeah.
That is one thing that I talk about, especially, I think I talked about it in like my episode where I share my story, is that's one of my number one problems with the foster care agents, or with the foster care system, is whenever there's like allegations against foster parents, they let them know like a week in advance, hey, we're coming out on this day and we're investigating this situation. So it allows them time to prepare a story, and for them to tell you, hey, you better tell them this, otherwise this is going to happen. Yeah. And like for me, it was like, you better tell them this, otherwise they're going to take you from the home and separate you from your brother. Yeah. You don't want to be separated from your brother, do you?
Yeah.
No, of course I don't. So yeah, I'm going to lie.
So I was separated from my brothers, and I was placed in one particular foster home by myself, and so they used visitation as leverage.
Wow.
So if you don't say this and you don't do this, then you can't see them. And there were times where I would go months without seeing my family.
Wow.
And
they allowed that.
Because they would be like, "Oh, she's sick," or
you would think at a certain point they
would say, "Hey,
what's going on?"
Yeah.
Wow.
So it was not great. And I don't think there's a single person who can say that foster care is a great experience. Even if you have the best foster parents, you still have trauma around that.
Yeah.
Because you're separated.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you by Red Bike Delivery. This delivery service operates only using battery-powered, eco-friendly transportation. Red Bike Delivery is there for all your delivery needs, whether it's dinner for the family, flowers for your partner, or new houseplants for your new collection. Red Bike Delivery will gladly deliver those and everything in between. So what are you waiting for? Check out Red Bike Delivery on Facebook or Instagram for more information. Red Bike Delivery, because there's only one Earth. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize the like the shame that goes with it too, because like I remember for me when I started, like when I went into foster care and then I started going to school, it was like midway through the year. So people are like, "Where'd you come from?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm in foster care."
Yeah.
Foster care? Why are you in foster care? Your mom or your dad must be a piece of shit. Yeah. Like, no, I mean, and then obviously, then now you're that person. You're the outcast essentially.
When I was in third grade, I got put in a class, and the teacher, I mean, she was really, really nice, and she was like, "Here's DK, and she's our foster student for the class," and I was like,
like you're a class pet.
I was always really, really shy as a kid, and even now, like social anxiety, I'm like, no, thank you. So being basically put on display.
Yeah.
In the front of the class, and I was like, no, I would just rather sit in the back and not have nobody acknowledge me.
Yeah. Yeah, that was something that like I got real comfortable not telling people about my story, because I remember like when I was in high school, I was telling somebody like we were working in this group. I think it was a forensic science class. So we had like a group of 4 people that we worked with, and then we just get to talking about who we are and whatnot. And I remember telling this girl like about my past and some of the things I was going through at the time too. And she's like, that is so crazy, because she's like, I look at you and I would think that you like have like you're a normal person. I'm like, and that stuck with me like to this day, because I'm like, I was putting on this like fake facade essentially, so people looked at me differently because I didn't want to be looked at as like the other.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be othered. And I think that's something that a lot of foster kids do, because they're kind of ashamed, because there's like a shame around that, right?
Yeah. And I do the same thing. Some of my really good friends that I have told bits and pieces of my story to, they've been shocked, and I always get that, oh, you're the strongest person I know. And I have a really hard time with that compliment, because I shouldn't have to have gone through those things. So it's kind of one of those compliments.
But do you think that that going through some of those things made you a better person, and like essentially going through fire, like iron sharpens iron?
Yeah, I think that it was it definitely molded me into the person that I am today, and it allowed me to have a different perspective that most people might not have had. That being said, I don't really think I would have wanted to go through all of those things.
I don't think anybody would want to.
No, but it's that for me, I question all the time, because people ask, well, if you had a time machine and you could go back, would you do it? Would you save yourself? And probably, but if I had to go through those things to become the person that I am today, I would probably be there and say, here's some moral support. You're going to get through this. You're going to survive.
Yeah.
But that being said, everybody has, even the most perfect nuclear family still has issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just some people have more trauma than others.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a very spectrum type of thing, because some people have really, really great experiences in foster care, but they were still in foster care.
Yeah.
So the perception is that it's very shameful.
Yeah.
But I think that,
I mean, it's shameful because of everything that's wrapped around it, right? Like for one, which I hate too, is the stereotypes of, oh, you're in foster care, like you're going to end up in jail, or you're going to end up as this or that. And that's what bothers me, because I'm like, I'm none of that. Like, like you don't have to be those things. You don't have to be defined by an umbrella of different, like different things. That bothers me.
Yeah. And that is, it just goes to show the lack of support for once you age out of the system. There's no support. It's like, all right, you're 18 and you've been in foster care your whole life.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Good luck.
And I, thankfully, I was able to get put back with my family. But even then, there's still that stigma of, you had this go wrong and this go wrong and this go wrong. And the statistics are that, teen pregnancy and addiction and all of those things. And
jail.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to make anything of yourself. Yeah.
And why even try? And when you have people who have all of that around them, and that's the only support circle that they have, and are these people telling them that you're never going to be anything, it's very easy to slip into that mentality of, okay, so why even try?
Yeah. Why try? I had my my adopted mom. She always told me, you're never going to amount to anything. And that stuck with me like my whole life. I mean, not so much anymore, but it used to be one of those things where like I would use it as motivation, because I'm like, I'm going to prove her wrong. Like, I'm not going to be what she thinks I'm going to be. And, or like she would throw the stereotypes of like, oh, you're going to go to jail, or you're going to be, cause my dad wasn't involved in my life really at all. You're not going to be a good father, things like that. And then, I've been dead set on proving all those things wrong. I want to be a better person than what, the people who say that I'm not going to be.
Yeah.
So, that there's a lot of stigmas that's attached to being a foster child. And that's actually one reason why I started the podcast, was because I I actually originally started this podcast because I wanted to interview other people who were in foster care, and I wanted to bring more awareness around the foster care system. But as time went on, it was difficult to find those kind of people. And I'm like, you know what? Why not expand the podcast to other things also? So that's why we're here. Yeah. But yeah, that's cool. That's interesting. And it's so interesting because like, there's so many people that I'm like, I'll invite on the podcast and they're like, I don't have anything interesting to talk about. And I'm like, we could find something. Yeah. We can find something. Yeah. But I guarantee you, if I just started asking you about the nonprofit you worked at, we probably wouldn't have got into you being in foster care. Yeah. That's so interesting.
Yeah. I find that when people have the ability to talk about themselves, I have always wanted to be, I don't know if you've ever seen it on like social media where there are people that'll like stand at the corner and they say, tell me your story. I just like, I want to do that one day and just be like, park right outside Michigan Ave and just my little sign, see who stops to talk to me.
You should do it. You should totally do it. And then record it.
Yeah. That would be when I have time between working like my full-time real person adult job and doing the nonprofit work through the rescue. I don't really have time for anything other than
that.
Yeah.
I get it. I work full time and then do the podcast, and the podcast itself is like a job, like a full-time job plus some. Yeah, I get that. So let's talk a little bit about what you do. What do you do for work? And then we'll get into the nonprofit. Yeah.
I watch the news for work. For my job, I am an intelligence analyst. So I basically watch the news. I draft reports, monitoring incidents that could potentially impact like the company I work for, or if we have associates somewhere, and let them know severe weather, stuff like that.
So you watch the news so that you can prepare people or prepare the insurance company, like, hey, this disaster might hit, this tornado might hit, so it might wipe out these houses. Right. So you guys might have to pay in.
Kind of like that. And just be like, hey, these are, the things that we have to be aware about.
Okay.
Big, $5 word is business continuity. So making sure that operations are still smooth sailing regardless of the bumps that are, weather, protests, stuff like that.
So weather, protests, things that might like...
COVID was a huge one.
Really?
So much between the lockdowns, the restrictions, travel bans, testing, all of that, and monitoring
how does that affect an insurance company?
Well, for my specific job, when we had travelers overseas saying like, oh, hey, we have someone going to the UK. Here's the, one, you have to be vaccinated. You have to do this, and this to get into the country. And then once you get into the country, you have a 7-14, one country was 21 days of quarantine before you can even leave to go do your things.
Wow.
So it was...
That's crazy.
And someone has to sift through all of that information. So that's kind of what I do and my department does.
Okay.
Say, hey, here's the TLDR version, because you don't want to read through hundreds and hundreds of pages of country policy and all of that stuff.
Wow, that's interesting. I never knew that was a job.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So by doing that, you watch like all the major news networks, right? Like Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC, things like that.
And then local news as well.
Okay. Wow. And so I could imagine that you're probably overwhelmed with the media.
Some days it's, the same thing on a different channel, and trying to get the information without the bias of either side, because no matter what avenue you're getting your information, you're still getting it from a biased source.
Correct. Yeah. I think a lot of people are starting to realize that. I mean, except for maybe the old people, they still watch. They still watch the news like religiously.
It's very funny because they are so attuned to, well, don't believe everything you see on the internet, but you know what, the TV told me something, so it must be true. And just, you know, I think it's funny because they hold very dearly to those perceptions, because just because it's on the TV or, you know, printed in a book, well, if that book is, you know, 60, 70 years old and technology or science or information has changed, just because that book said at the time that this was, you know, whatever, doesn't mean that it accurately reflects what we know now.
I had my dad tell me just recently about something. I can't remember what it was, but he was like, it was a study from the 1960s. And I'm like, dude, bro, that was the 1960s. I don't believe any study that took place in the 60s.
Yeah. Between the lack of information and also when you talk about ethical studies being done, you can look at some of those like some of the psychological studies that have been done.
Yeah.
Those would have never been able to be done in today's ethical standards.
Yeah.
And you look back on it, you go, wow, someone said that this was okay.
Yeah. I had Richard Prangley on the podcast last year, and I don't know if you know who he is, but he's a local guy, and I believe in the 1960s he was put into a mental hospital when he was like 6, and because he's special needs, and his parents were like just didn't want to deal with him, because back then being special needs like meant that you were like scum of the earth essentially. And you were just shunned. So they put him in this group home, which was like a prison for people like him in Coldwater. And it's hard to think that it was in Coldwater, Michigan. Like, that's just 45 minutes down the highway.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, he came on and shared his story and some of the things he went through and some of the like tortures and stuff they would put him through. Like, they would like electrocute him and stuff and all kinds of things. It's like, that would not be ethical today.
Yeah.
That prison shut down now.
In Mount Pleasant, there is a Chippewa tribal lands, and there's actually a residential school up there too. And you can, just driving by it a couple of times, I've stopped and I've looked at it and go, man, the things that they must have done in those buildings to those children, because that's what they did.
Yeah.
It's really heavy to look at those buildings and just feel all of that.
Yeah, it's intense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very intense. It's kind of like going to a place where like something horrific happened, or like or you go somewhere that's like a war took place and you're like, wow, this is where it happened.
Yeah,
this is insane. There's like a feeling you get.
And so in December, I went down to Kentucky for to help with relief efforts for those tornadoes, and just seeing all of the devastation. I was just by myself, and there's not like good enough words to describe how that feels. And some people kind of had a little bit of an inkling of that, when all of the shortages started happening in COVID, like during COVID, when you'd walk in the grocery store and it's completely empty.
Yeah.
And there's that uneasy feeling of this is not how it's supposed to look.
Yeah.
And knowing that, this is not something that is typical, but not that that's completely related, but I just thought of it.
It definitely is related, because you're going into a place that's completely devastated. It's been hit by tragedy. It's so hard that it impacts a whole community. And kind of like COVID, it was, I guess, like on a smaller scale as far as like devastation wise. Like it wasn't just going. I gotta be careful because I don't want to like insult anybody that lost somebody. Like, I'm not trying to undermine any of that.
It's a very very personal experience for people who have gone through it. But if I'm largely unaffected, then I can't relate emotionally or psychologically to someone who's experienced that loss.
Right.
So it is.
Yeah, because like for me personally, I got COVID and I was fine, but somebody else could have got it and died, and it's very tragic. But as far as like affecting a whole community at once and it killing a majority of the people or destroying homes and stuff like that tornado that went through Kentucky completely, like you said, flatlined cities. And I couldn't imagine like just feeling completely hopeless because I mean, everybody's livelihood and everything's just gone.
Yeah. And there's no quick fix. It's not like, okay, well, we're going to
wait 14 days.
Yeah. We're going to be like, all right, in a month we'll have a brand new home or anything. There are people that are still cleaning up. I made friends with some people down there who are still, I mean, we're in April now, 5 months later, they're still repairing and rebuilding.
Wow.
Just clearing out some of that debris.
Wow. That's so crazy. I remember when I lived in Charlotte, when I was younger, a tornado came through and wiped out like a bunch of houses and stuff. And I knew somebody who had their house wiped out. And I just remember thinking like, wow, like what would that be like?
Yeah.
It's so crazy. Like not having a house.
Yeah. And
what would you do?
one day it's there and the next
gone.
Second,
it's gone.
Along with
it's in the wind.
Oh, bad joke.
That is a bad joke.
And knowing that your entire life, if you've lived in that house 20, 30 years, you have all of your memories.
Yeah. Pictures.
Like awards, down to like clothing, like my favorite hoodie or, my child's first Christmas outfit or whatever sentimental stuff that you can't replace. Sure, you can go get a new house and you can go get new couches and furniture. Yeah. You can't replace some of those memories.
Yeah. What did a lot of those people do when were they put up by like different organizations, like in hotels?
So some of them. So there was a state park that had lodging. So the state park opened up and said, "Here, residents, you can come here," and they actually allowed pets. So that was really great. This is a little bonus because I can't imagine one going through something like that and then being told like, "Oh, we have assistance for housing, but you can't have any animals."
Wow.
Which is really, really ridiculous because
what do you do in tragedy?
Right.
It's not like you can board your pet.
Right. And you have people who have a dog or 2 cats or 4 cats or 5 cats like me.
How many cats do you have?
I have 5.
Are you a crazy cat lady?
I'm getting there.
What defines a crazy cat lady to you? 6?
For me, there's a point of ability to care versus amount that I have. So I could very easily just have 1 cat and say, I can spoil you rotten and I have 5 cats. But if I had 5 cats, and this is where you don't want to, poor people can have pets too. So it's a very, very fine line. Just like with children, you can have so many animals, but if you don't have the ability to care for them properly, that's to me when that becomes an issue, because it's not so much I want to have a good home. It's I need these things around me so that I have some type of whatever void in my life is filled through the animals. And we've dealt with like hoarding situations where, we're pulling 30, 40, 60, 70 cats out of a house.
Oh, wow.
And those people, it is a mental illness.
Yeah.
So you have to be very delicate. And say, this isn't sustainable and it's not healthy for you and it's not healthy for these animals.
How do they feed them? That's what I want to know. Like, how can you afford that?
A lot of them sacrifice for their own needs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, if they, just like in any other hoarding situation, they will spend thousands and thousands of dollars for items.
Yeah.
And then like, when's the last time you ate? Oh, like 3 days ago. And, you know, I have these crackers that are, 3 months expired that I dug out of the trash. That's one specific episode of Hoarder that I saw.
That show gives me anxiety.
It does. And then you have to realize that it's also kind of not really glamorized, but it is very, very clearly made for television, and it is made for the viewer experience, not necessarily the overall complexity. Yeah.
You're exploiting people that have a mental illness. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It is kind of interesting, though, that people will live that way. Mm-hmm. I don't know, especially when you see like a house full of like animals and you're like, oh, how does somebody like, how do you do that? And it's crazy to know that like people will live that way and then have those pets and they'll die. The pets will die and not even know, they won't even know they're there, which is crazy.
So I chuckle because I have gone through and I've seen some really, really horrific things. We had a property where this guy had 35 cats in his house and he died in that house.
The guy did?
Mm-hmm. And obviously after that, there's no caretaker anymore. So the neighbor contacted us and said, hey, there's this old man and he had all of these cats and we don't know what to do because the family had a final solution for the animals that wasn't
euthanize.
Euthanasia is humane. They were not going to go that route. It made it very clear that either we come and get the cats or they were going to handle it themselves.
Oh, wow.
And we don't like those situations because when you have a hostile community member, you're working on a timetable. So you have to get those animals out as fast as you can. But walking into that house, that guy lived and died there, and he had been there 60-something years. And you could definitely, walking through that house, you could see it. But towards the end of his life, he wasn't able to take care of them, and none of them were fixed. So they were just having litter after litter after litter. Because that's what you did 60 years ago. You didn't pay anybody to fix your animal.
Right.
They were just cats or just dogs or, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was just, having the experience of like finding deceased animals in a property, knowing that they didn't get the care that they deserved. But that guy also needed help and didn't reach out or didn't know that it was a problem.
Yeah.
Because those were he died alone in that house and he had one relative that lived kind of far away. Those animals were his support system and they were his reason to get up. And he knew all of them by name. All the neighbors knew that he knew all of them by name. And, talking to one of the neighbors, like he would just sit out on his porch from sun up to sundown talking to all these cats. They would like sit on the steps and he would feed them and
that's crazy.
Yeah.
That is so crazy. I couldn't imagine having that many pets. I have 3 and I feel overwhelmed sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It is.
You have 5, so
I do.
You got your hands full too.
And then I have 2 ferrets.
Wow. Ferrets are kind of cool.
Yeah,
they're interesting.
They are very mischievous. And one time I was late for work because I couldn't find my keys, and I
knew you were going to say that.
Yep, I had set them down, and I was like, I just had them, and one of my ferrets, her name is Bones. Both of my ferrets are rescues, and I found Bones in an apartment complex when I was trapping a feral mom and her kittens. And I found her the day before Halloween, and she was literally skin and bones. She had been abandoned. Someone, adopted her as a young ferret or got it as a gift or whatever. And ferrets are kind of smelly, and if you are not prepared for actual care of them, it can be really intense really fast. Or they moved out and decided they didn't want her anymore, so they just threw her outside.
Wow.
And that's that's the solution that a lot of people think is appropriate, is just throw it outside.
They'll survive.
Yeah, they'll
find
survive. They're animals. They'll do it. People do it with rabbits all of the time because they're rabbits. They'll just eat grass. But if that rabbit's never been outside, it's just going to starve to death, and it's a very slow, agonizing death, and that's not fair for them.
Yeah, that's crazy. Now let's talk about your the nonprofit that you work for. Did you found it?
No.
Found?
I
found?
am. Yeah.
Founded?
No.
No.
I am just a volunteer for Saved by Zade.
Okay.
But I do a lot of the behind the scenes outreach work. So I do a lot of the trapping for TNR, which is trap, neuter, return. And Saved by Zade does trap, neuter, vaccinate, return, so that we're reducing disease population or disease in the populations of these colony cats. Because removal's never really the goal for these established colonies. It's return them because that's their home, that's their stomping grounds. They know food source, they know protection, they know all of that. And in some cases, removal is necessary. But if you have someone who's feeding this colony of cats on like a farm or just residential, fixing those cats stops the problem, and that colony will over time decrease.
Yeah. That's kind of important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because even if feral cats are a problem for every community. Just because you don't see them doesn't mean that there's not stray cats. I live in downtown Lansing, and every night I see a new different cat.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I have 2 consistent feral community cats that come around to my house.
Do you feed them?
I do.
That's why.
I feed them, and they come around because they know that my house is a good house to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're eating at my house, I can keep tabs on them and keep track of them and monitor, their coats, their overall health, and make sure that, even if I don't see him for 3 weeks, one of them comes and goes as he pleases. I'm pretty sure that he is someone's indoor-outdoor cat, but he does have a tipped ear. So one of the universal signs for a feral cat that's been fixed is, so you have your cat's ear. It looks like this, but tipping is just removing the top part, so it's a straight line across.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in nature, so it's a universal sign that you see a cat that's walking outside. That cat's already been fixed. It might have a community caretaker, but it also might just be a feral cat that's part of a colony.
I never had that happen. I didn't have my cat's ears tipped when they got fixed.
So that is typically used for cats that go outside.
Oh, okay.
It's not a common practice for like
indoor.
I say domesticated, but all cats are domesticated.
Yeah.
But non-feral cats. So there's a difference between an inside-outside cat and a feral cat.
Yeah.
And stray cats. So stray cats are just cats that don't have homes. Feral cats are completely unsocialized. They may or may not come around to like a couple of community members, but they're not like social butterflies. The 2 cats that come around to my house, they're completely feral. They sit on the sidewalk when I put the food out, and they wait for me to go inside my house. They hear my door lock.
Wow.
And then they come up, and then I peek like a little creeper through the window watching them.
Oh, that's funny. Our cat, the fat cat that you've seen, she showed up in our garage one day. It was like dead winter, and she was a kitten. I'm like, where did she come from? Like somebody just drop her off outside. If she was a kitten, like she was probably only like a couple weeks old.
Yeah.
That's so insane. And she just like showed up in our garage. It's strange.
So did she have her eyes opened?
Yeah. Yeah. She was old enough to like where she could walk around and stuff. So I don't know if she just walked and wandered into our garage or if somebody threw her in our garage.
Yeah. So like a 2-week-old kitten would be like.
Yeah. No, she was bigger than that. Yeah. She was probably I don't know, 5 weeks, something like that.
And that's, one of the biggest things that we ask people is, they say, oh, I have a kitten. Okay, so that is a term that is very loose. Is it itty bitty umbilical cord kitten? Is it,
Wow.
6 months old and you think that it's a kitten
Right.
because it's tiny? And so when we get community help requests, that's one of the things that we ask, because people will be like, oh, this cat showed up. We think it's a kitten. And then we come and show up and it's like a full grown adult tomcat, because people see a cat and they think, oh, automatically that it's unowned or
Yeah.
needs assistance.
What made you so into animals? Did you have animals growing up? I mean, obviously you were in foster care, so you couldn't really get too attached to an animal. What was?
I have always just really loved animals. There's something about not having a voice, or being able to advocate for myself and relating to an animal who can't tell me how they're feeling, or whether they're sick or hurt or hungry. I mean, some cats will just scream at you to feed them.
My cat does.
Yeah, one of my cats does too, and he wears his emotions on his face, and it is very funny. But I just relate really, really deeply to the fact that these animals need someone to advocate for them. Just like I needed, children need someone to advocate for them because they don't maybe have the words to articulate what they're feeling or anything like that. And for animals, it's even less so.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. That you feel like, did you feel like you had somebody advocating for you when you were in foster care and stuff?
Not really.
No. That brings me to like a saying that like I hear all the time, that be the person that you needed when you were a kid or whatever, something like that.
Yeah.
But that's interesting that you apply that to animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mostly out of spite. It's almost like a defining characteristic that I am selfless and compassionate to a fault, because there were people in my life who were less than that. So I will pour everything that I have into animals, and I really love feral cats because they have very firm boundaries and they will enforce them.
That is true.
Even if I am trying to do something good for them, like getting them fixed or so a lot of the colony cats that we have come in with parasites or disease or sickness, and trying to medicate them is a challenge all in of itself. And even though they don't know that I'm doing something good for them, they're still scared of me, but I know that what I'm doing makes their life better.
Yeah.
And if they end up still hating me, then they end up hating me, but at least they're healthy. And then they can continue living a quality life.
Yeah. It's interesting when you first get an animal, like our cat who showed up, we went through that whole process of feeding her and like her having to trust us. But it's funny how quickly they kind of adapt. We're like, okay, this person has good intentions. This person doesn't want to hurt me.
Yeah. One of my favorite community cat, his name is Rupert. I named him. And he has, over the last 2.5 years that I've lived at my house, he has slowly come up the driveway, and he still will sit under the bush, like by my porch. And he knows my schedule. So he knows when I come home from work. He knows when I leave. He'll just pop up, and it is the funniest thing watching him, because I cannot touch him. But he'll come running down the street with his tail up, and then he'll get to me and he'll hiss and, everything. And then he'll just be like, all right, feed me. I know you're here. Feed me.
That is funny.
And he knows my routine. I kind of know his. I know that he'll show up for food. But when weather's crappy like this, I have shelters on the back of my yard, and just seeing him in there, it's relief because I know that he's there and he's safe.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's so cool that you're passionate about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish that more people saw them for what they are, they're just trying to survive.
Yeah. I think cats are cool.
Me too.
I mean, I used to not really like cats until we got our cats, and I like them. They're really cool. They're really interesting. Like it's kind of funny how each cat has their own like personality in a sense. It's like our cat, Ella, the fat one. She had I call her a little gangster because she's from the streets.
Yeah.
And so I think I call her like Little E sometimes too. But yeah, no, it's interesting, like some of their behaviors and the way I don't remember where I was going with this, the way they act. Yeah, I don't remember where I was going with that.
Yeah.
I just like, my thought just went away.
Yeah. So I have a wide spectrum of personalities in my little clan. One of my kitties, his name is Mr. Grumpykins. I actually trapped him from a community member's porch. She had seen him eating rocks in her driveway. So he was really old. The vet said that he was just old AF. On the little chart, it just says old with like an underline.
That's funny.
And he was a community cat that just roamed the streets. And he was in not great health. When I ended up, they contacted us, the rescue, and it was only a couple of blocks from my house. So I went and trapped him, and we ended up removing almost all of his teeth. So he has like one half tooth and just gums, and he was mean. And over time, he had to be on antibiotics for 14 days after his surgery. And that was so much fun. But after he got his medication and he started feeling better, his personality changed. And over that time, I did very, very slow transitionals with him. Just, all right, all of the food comes from me. Here are positive reinforcements. And then touching him was like an accomplishment. And then he just never left my house.
Wow. So he's your cat now?
Yes. He is the resident busybody. He always has to know like what I'm doing.
That's funny.
He's my little security officer. He'll sit and watch in the window, and I know if like there's a car coming down the street because he'll like be like, all right, someone's coming. But he had to learn that not all humans were trustworthy. And I can't imagine some of the stuff that he's been through. He does have some scarring on his face that from maybe fighting, or maybe he had something thrown at him, but he's even now I've had him for over a year and he's still very skittish on like fast movements, but he's an absolute like buddy. If I'm watching TV, he's up on my lap and he's like, all right, we're living the good life.
That's awesome. Could you imagine if you had like a camera attached to him while he was like out there wandering the streets, like what his life was like?
Yeah, I wonder that sometimes.
Like, what did you go through?
Yeah. And some of the cats, you can just see it on their face.
I bet if you knew some of the things that he went through and some of the things he did, you would be like, I don't know if I want you as a pet.
Yeah.
You murdered some animals.
Yeah. Oh, so I have, there's an opossum that comes up at night, and Grumpykins hates that guy. Like, it is on sight if he sees him. Because and I'm sure that he probably got into a fight with an opossum or if there's a raccoon on my porch, he's gone. And we actually have a kitty in our rescue right now that was attacked by a raccoon, and he suffered some really, really bad injuries. And these people saw it happen. They contacted us, and it was like 10:30 at night. Wow. So we rushed out to the emergency hospital at MSU, and they got him seen. And thankfully he survived his injuries, but it was really, really bad. And he actually completed his quarantine today.
Wow. So
congratulations to him.
awesome. So do you guys just work with cats? Or do you work with other animals?
So we are a cat rescue.
Okay.
We have a running joke in our volunteers that we sponsor one dog a year. For the past several years, there's been like one special circumstance or a dog that a volunteer has found, or whatever that. But we are primarily a cat rescue.
Okay.
And a ferret rescue. for me.
Right.
But we don't have the capacity to handle dogs because at our shelter we don't have like dog kennels or a dog run for them to go outside.
Right. Do you guys have a location?
Yes, our shelter is in Leslie.
Oh wow.
So right on Main Street.
Okay. Wow, that's not terribly far.
It's like 27 minutes or shorter depending on how fast I drive.
So how do you catch these cats? How do you trap them?
With a cat trap. So if
What's a cat trap?
A cat trap, if you've ever seen like the box traps from like Tractor Supply.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So you can use those, but we use something called a true catch trap that is made by Tomahawk that's specifically designed for cats. And then I also have something called a drop trap, which is they're very fun to use. If you imagine like those old cartoons where you have the box on the stick, the string on it.
Yeah.
It's just one of those. And
that would be fun to use.
It's very, and it's really weird to be like, oh yeah, this is fun. But when you have elusive cats or injured cats, using that drop trap, it'll get them where they might not go into a standard box trap if they're, if they've been trapped before, or what we've seen in colonies is they've seen, everybody else trapped in this box and they don't come back.
Yeah.
They won't go in them. So having a drop trap where it's like they just go under it, that makes it a little easier.
Yeah, that sounds like it would be very difficult. It sounds like you definitely have to be experienced at it.
Yes and no, because it is very simple to operate it, but the complexity of
trying to get them in it,
trying to get them in it, trying to get the timing of the animals that are around. For a drop trap, you have the ability to manually close it, whereas for like a box trap, the first thing that goes in it and steps on the plate's the only thing that you're going to catch.
Right.
So I've caught a lot of raccoons and possums and skunks.
Oh, what do you do with the skunks? How do you get rid of them?
I always carry blankets and towels with me and sheets. And so you cover the trap and then you just prop the door open. And then I like to take a couple big steps back, pull the blanket, and then it uncovers it. And then they like go like, oh, where can I go? And then the door's open, so they just run out. And that process has worked. And so far I have not been sprayed. But I know my time is coming.
Oh, man. Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah.
Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. But that is something that I know is inevitable. So.
My dog has been sprayed several times by a skunk. And just recently, I think it was this last winter, I used to take her running every morning before work. So we'd get up. It's real early. Nobody's out and driving. Obviously, the neighborhood's like pretty secluded and whatnot. So I will start the run off with her off the leash because she doesn't act as crazy on the leash. Like if I put her on the leash and then start running, she's like digging in and dragging me. But if I let her run like down to the end of the street and I clip her, she's good and we can have an enjoyable run. But this morning, that morning, I let her off the leash and we're running, get to the end of the street, and there's a skunk. And she sees it and she beelines for it and chases it into a fence where it's blocked off, and the skunk just sprayed her like directly in the face. And she comes running back over, and she's like scooting across like the grass,
Yeah.
like trying to rub it off. And I'm like, oh, there goes that run.
Yeah.
So we went back home. But yeah, that was terrible. I hate skunks. Not a fan.
Yeah.
I did catch a raccoon one time though, in one of those traps, like you were saying, and I was a little scared.
Yeah.
Because raccoons can be very dangerous.
I have trapped a couple of raccoons. I love possums because they're hissy, but they're so chill.
Yeah.
I've trapped them, and I've literally just opened the trap and shook them out. Like, all right, go on, go. I won't do that for a raccoon. I'll just prop the door open.
Let it go.
Because a couple of times they'll come out and they're so spiteful. That one of them came out and then came at me, and I was like, nope, I'm just gonna keep walking back.
So how much time do you spend obviously you work full time, and then you work for the nonprofit. How much time do you spend doing that kind of stuff?
So I work, but it's not paid. It is all volunteer.
Yeah.
Almost every hour that I'm not currently at work.
Wow.
Right now we're in kitten season. So between April to, really February to November, it's constant with babies being born, emergent. So on top of just people saying, hey, I can't have my cat anymore. My neighbor moved, or, on top of the general help requests that we get in kitten season, it's help. I found these 3-day-old kittens and mom hasn't come back, or I have these kittens and mom died, or I can't have this cat, had kittens in my garage and I have a vicious dog, and it's just round the clock.
Right. Yeah, cats are one of those things that the population of them is just crazy. I mean, you literally can just get cats for free because there's so many of them.
There's so many of them, and we really, really need more spay and neuter clinics. We need more affordability is kind of a touchy subject, because veterinarian offices are not out to price gouge and make money. They are a business just like a hospital is. But we have human insurance for most things, whereas pet insurance is very slowly there's a couple of companies, but those upfront costs, those vets are just trying to run their business and save animals. They're not out there to, bleed people dry.
Yeah.
They still have operational costs. They went to school. They have just as much student loan debt as doctors do, and they get paid half of what doctors do.
Yeah, it's just kind of crazy though, because I've taken we had a husky for a little while, and he got attacked. Him and my other dog. We don't have the husky anymore. But my dog that I have now, they both were attacked by a skunk. My dog now got sprayed, and then so did the other dog. But the other dog also got bit by the skunk, to where it was we didn't realize it at first because he had so much fur. It was it was difficult to see, and he was a puppy, so he's super active, barely would let you grab onto him. But then we realized he got, he had a wound, and so we took him to the vet clinic, and it's MSU vet clinic's dang, this is expensive. Yeah. And we take him to our actual vet a couple days later. And obviously we paid for the services for them to get him, fixed, whatever they did. I can't remember what they did. But then we took him to the vet, and they're like, yeah, that wasn't necessary. He just needed some antibiotics. He's fine. So yeah, it was kind of crazy. Yeah. It was $1,000 and it didn't need to be.
Yeah. And that's where, just like an emergency room visit for a human,
that's true,
is going to be a lot more expensive.
That is true.
If you go to the ER and say, oh, my throat hurts.
Yeah.
They're going to charge you the ER visit and, your amoxicillin that you could have just scheduled an appointment with your doctor.
That is true. That's a good point.
But it's always better to take your animal in, because there could be something underlying, especially with bite wounds. Abscesses are really, really, they're really common. They're really, really nasty, and they can get bad really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, we thought it was pretty bad, but it didn't end up being that bad.
And if you've never seen a bite before, it's going to be really traumatizing to you and be like, oh my gosh, this is horrible.
Yeah.
And then, the ER clinic's like, oh yeah, this is, a bite wound. We've seen 8 of them today.
Yeah. So with the nonprofit that you work for, Zade is what it's called?
Saved by Zade.
Saved by Zade. Do they allow people to adopt cats or kittens?
We have basically the adoption side, which is we have an adoption center, PetSmart on the West Lansing side, and then we also partner with Constellation Cat Cafe in East Lansing.
Cool.
So our kitties go there for adoption, and then we also put them on Pet Finder, and a lot of our I also foster, so I'll be like, hey, my foster kitty's ready, so here all my friends see it, and then they share those posts, and
this is our foster cat.
Yeah. And fostering is such a rewarding experience, having also been a foster child, knowing that I am the one that's making the difference in the cat's life and getting them healthy and getting them up to date, fully vetted, taking them to their spay and neuter appointment, anything that they need to get adoptable, and then going and getting them that forever home. It's just, it's an incredible feeling.
Yeah, I could imagine. I understand what you're saying with that. Now, and the thing is with a cat too, or any animal who gets adopted, they'll live a happy life. They'll be happy as long as they go to a good home.
Yeah.
Whereas humans aren't necessarily the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very unfortunate.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to talk about on the podcast?
Oh,
anything you want to mention?
Well, so right now what we're doing is we're going out and with kitten season, getting colony kitties fixed and fully vetted means that we fix them, we get them combo tested for FIV, which is feline immunodeficiency virus, so feline HIV and feline leukemia, making sure that they're healthy enough to return to their colonies. And that process it's very complicated because it's not just so simple as people think, oh, well, just come get the cats. We don't want them back. Well, what are we supposed to do because yesterday we got 86 messages on our Facebook page of people being like, I want to rehome my cat. I want to do this. I want to do that. And rescue is literally 24/7. Someone is either at our shelter working, out in the field. After I leave here, I'm going out to go trap. So, and after working today.
Oh my gosh.
Like I said, it is a very, very busy season for us. But so if someone were to say, oh my gosh, I have this one cat. Well, if you don't get that kitty fixed, that one cat will very, very quickly turn into several cats. And then those several cats will turn into 50 cats. So getting those animals fixed is really to stop the cycle is the most important thing. And that's really what we believe in, is getting those kitties. Because we do sometimes we'll do just sponsored surgeries where all right, we will pay. Please take your cat to this appointment.
Wow.
So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I like that you guys catch the cats, get them fixed, get them their shots or whatever they need to be healthy, and then you just let them go back to their families, their friends, or whoever they hang out with.
That is the ultimate goal, is to just reunite them with their colony.
Yeah.
Because that's their home, that's their entire social structure. And we do I did a farm placement last week for some colony kitties. So we took the colony kitties that we had from this property, we put them in a barn, and then there's an acclimation period with that. So typically they should stay in the dog kennels for 3 weeks, and there's a whole setup for feral cat placement. But when you're talking about, so in 2021, we did over 2,000 cats in just 1 year.
Wow.
And in 2020 with the pandemic, and everything being shut down, it was really, really difficult for us to get spay and neuter appointments. And so all of the work that we're doing, we're not going to see those results for, 10 years. But
right.
when you start doing population control, and there's actually, I don't know if you've ever heard of a Judas goat. Probably not. There was an island, I think it was in the Philippines, Southeast Asia, where they had a feral goat problem.
Oh.
Goats. So they were just destroying the island.
Yeah.
No competition, no predators, when you're talking thousands and thousands of goats, you cannot kill them fast enough to eat them.
Right. Yeah.
So what they were doing is they had little like social goats that they had like radio tagged, and it took them, I think, 15 or 20 years to completely reduce that population.
Wow.
Now there's like 200 goats that are still left on that island.
Holy cow.
But it is a process, and in
they wiped out so many goats.
Yeah, but it took getting them fixed so they stopped breeding. It took authorized hunting and culling, and when you talk about stuff like that, and people say, well, cats are an invasive species, they kill the wildlife, and everything like that. That's true.
I don't mind them killing wildlife. Yeah. Like, you can get rid of the mice around my house. I'm okay with it.
The mice, the rodents. We had a lady contact us once on Facebook because she saw a cat kill a chipmunk, and she was
appalled.
She was appalled because this feral cat that she's been feeding for years and never bothered getting fixed how dare it kill a chipmunk?
It's just trying to live.
Yeah, in her yard.
Yeah.
So it's very eclectic, but doing spay and neuter is probably one of the most important ways that we can do long-term population control, because I think in 2017 or 2018 they estimated 140 million cats across the United States.
Wow.
And I don't know of 140 million people that could take just one cat.
Yeah.
Let alone a feral cat who doesn't trust humans. So getting them fixed and letting them live their lives out is the most humane thing to do. And that's really what our mission is.
That's awesome. Is there other nonprofits or any other like humane societies doing the same kind of thing?
So Capital Area does have a spay and neuter clinic, and they have what's called the Community Cats Program. So you apply for it, and whether so there's like an application, and then they say, okay, you're approved. Here's the use of our traps. We'll show you how to do it. And then you get X amount of appointments, and here's the days that you're going to bring them into the clinic.
So you can just do it if you want.
Yeah.
Essentially, like a volunteer type thing.
Yeah.
Wow.
And we really strongly encourage people to do that so that it frees up our resources to go and focus on colonies that don't have access to that program.
Now, what if you catch somebody's cat? Somebody who has an indoor-outdoor cat, and you get them fixed and they didn't want them fixed.
So that has happened, and it's a very uncomfortable situation to be in. But what we do when we are trapping in I'll use the current colony that I'm trapping at, for example. This guy was arrested. He's in prison now. He's not coming back. And there's about 35 cats on this property. And what I did is for 2 weeks, I set up trail cams and put them near the feeding stations. And those trail cams captured every single animal that was coming and going. So I have all those pictures. And a couple of the kitties have collars on them. So you know that, hey, that's not, a kitty that we're after. And then posting that in the local community group, or even just going like, hey neighbor, I know that you have a indoor-outdoor cat. Can you tell me which one it is? Or, having those conversations before we even start trapping. And then once we trap a kitty, every cat's scanned for a microchip. and not everybody microchips their indoor-outdoor cats.
Yeah.
And then we check for a spay or neuter scar and or a tattoo. So if it's female, it'll be on the belly. Sometimes for males, they'll do it on the side. So we do those measures to try and make sure that we're not, catnapping someone's cat. But yeah, so we don't just like go prowling the streets looking for animals. We have we have a system, and then we're also trapping on certain properties. Mm-hmm. So if you are the neighbor and I say, hey, by the way, I'm going to come back tomorrow between this time and this time, please keep your cat inside. And it's not a perfect system, and sometimes that has happened, but we do the best that we can with what we have.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess if you don't want your cat being catnapped, then you should probably keep your pet inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also get it fixed. Because when we initially intake, so there's like a whole intake process into our system, we look for those signs. So getting your cat microchipped is one of the fastest ways and easiest ways for someone to say, okay, so you just take your microchip scanner and it'll beep.
Yeah.
So someone cared enough to have this kitty microchipped.
Right.
And then we can look up that information. And sometimes we've reunited lost pets. And other times it's like, oh, yeah, my cat, he's indoor, outdoor. We say, okay, here you go. Have your cat back.
Right. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That is a lot.
Yeah.
And I can't believe you work a full-time job and do that voluntarily.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really memorable.
Yeah.
I mean, because you spend a lot of time doing that.
Yeah. I think the biggest, so I'm not married. I don't have any kids. So, I don't have any, anything else to do is what I jokingly tell people, but really it's what my passion is, to be that advocate for the animals.
That's cool.
And someone's got to do it. And our organization realized that there's a huge need for it.
Do you see yourself doing it full time eventually?
If it paid money. And I say that jokingly because every single person in our rescue is not paid. We all are volunteer, and everybody works around each other's schedules.
Wow.
And I would feel icky about being paid because every single penny that we raise, we do bottle. So we have a kitten shower coming up on Sunday. We also have a pop can drive. So Michigan has the 10-cent returnables, and people who, might not necessarily donate towards money towards animals will be like, oh yeah, my garage full of pop cans from the Super Bowl, and I guess you guys can have them because I don't want to take them back. Well, that's $25 right there that you donated.
Yeah.
So all of that goes towards the care of the animals.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love what you're doing.
Yeah.
Keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm glad that you came on and talked about that.
Yeah.
And shared a little bit about your story. It's awesome. It's so interesting when I sit here and talk to people, and as I'm talking to them, I find out, they were in foster care, and it's like I would have never guessed.
Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to see how, I don't know your story completely, but some of the things that you've gone through and how it's applied to what you're doing now, and how you are passionate about helping animals and providing the best life for them as possible.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So one final thing, the Midwest way to wrap things up is one other thing. So compassion fatigue is really something that a lot of rescuers go through, and emergency responders or people who have to deal with traumatic things over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can be, you can feel burnt out because it's nonstop. But for me, it's okay. Well, we have to keep going because the animals depend on us.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I just, not rationalize isn't the right word for that, but that's how I process it, because all of the things that I've gone through and that I've seen, and in some of the really horrific cases that we've seen in just trapping the animals, whether like we've had cats that have been shot, that have been poisoned, and then we go out and catch them, and then we have to sit there as they suffer and we say goodbye to them and be like, we're so sorry. And I always feel like I failed, even though I had a kitty that was shot in a trailer park, and I crawled under this guy's trailer to get him, and we ended up having to put him down because he was really, really badly injured. It was the most humane thing to do. And I just sat there and I had him overnight, and I cried a lot, but being able to be that one to say, okay, here's a positive human interaction as you go into whatever's next. It's a lot emotionally, but I think that having gone through the things that I've gone through, it's also made me better at processing those things, whereas someone who hasn't ever experienced something traumatic might not be able to handle it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely, and that's what I was getting to earlier when I said that, do you think you would be the person you are if you hadn't gone through those things? And like for me personally, I wouldn't change a thing that I've gone through, even though it was like very terrible. My experience in foster care and even after foster care was very bad. But I wouldn't change any of that because I feel like, there was a period of time like after like I moved out and everything where I struggled with things emotionally and trying to just figure out who I am as a person. But now like I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of who I am, and it's made me a better person. I know what I don't want to do, and I know who I want to be, and it's made me have a different perspective on life and people in general. Right. And it's helped me. I mean, I'm doing the podcast because of it. Yeah. If I didn't go through that, I probably wouldn't be doing this. Right. So, I think everything happens for a reason, even though it's not good. Like, you don't have to be those things. Yeah. Like
the reasons might be really crappy and terrible, but that's how life is.
Yeah. And life's not fair.
Yeah.
It's really not. It's really not. But you just got to make the best of what you have and move on. And
you just have to try and make, I've never had those like grand illusions of I'm going to save the world. Mine has always been microscopic, where it's I'm going to make the immediate situation around me better. I might not, save 1 million people or 1 million cats, but if I can make the situation better because I'm in it, then I'm going to go for it.
I love it. I love that. That's a good way to end the podcast.
Yeah, I was like, hey, that's actually a really great way to end it. So.
That's a really good way to end it. Well, Katie, thank you for doing this. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully I can have you back one day when my cameras are actually working. Yeah. I apologize again for that. So for the viewers, sorry that there wasn't a 2-camera system, but it's still on video.
Yeah, it's life.
It's still there.
Yeah.
And you get a full view of what the studio looks like. So, all right. Well, thank you for doing this.
Of course.
All right. Bye.
It's like an awkward hang up.
I know. Bye.